Hello and thank you for joining me at Expecting Answers. We have another chapter for you and we're gonna answer all your burning questions on egg donation and surrogacy. My name is Ronit Gani and today I'll be interviewing Lisa Schuman. Lisa is a mental health professional and the founder of the Center of Family Building. She has years of experience in the industry and to this day she had helped hundreds of families. Hi Lisa, thank you for joining me. Before we start, I think our viewers would like to hear a bit more about your professional background.
Well, thank you for having me, Ronnie. I really appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here. So, yes, my name is Lisa Schuman, and I run a group called the Center for Family Building. And the reason why I created this group was because after working with so many people, I've had over 2,000, I would say, interviews with donors and recipients, and many more counseling appointments and many more surrogacy appointments. I see a trend over and over again. I've worked in clinics as a director of mental health services, as an on-staff therapist in many roles, and I've also worked in my private practice for many years. And wherever I go, I see the same stories over and over again. People are struggling with trying to have a better journey to be parents, and the whole world of reproductive medicine is very complicated. And I think people really need to understand that there are ways to be able to get the information that they need. When I went through this process myself decades ago, there was no one to help me. I had to figure everything out. And now you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? We have social media. We have all kinds of ways to communicate information. And it's really important to make sure that you do your homework before you jump into this and that you make your journey the best journey possible and that you don't have to feel anguish over the journey as well as the fertility treatment. Fertility treatment's hard enough. I'm writing a book now about donor conception, and we hope to publish it by the end of the year, so that's very exciting too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always say that a book is like another baby.
Yes, that's true. Right, it's like birth all over again, right? Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So you know what? If we're talking about egg donation, let's give a little bit information because I think that many intended parents that are just starting their journey, they can get lost in all of the steps in the way. I think that the basic question, and I keep on hearing different answers, is how to choose an egg donor.
Well, this is something that I go over in greater detail in my video programs and also in consultations. But I do think something that you and I spoke about is really important to think about, which is that even though it feels like an emotional process and it's understandable, right? You're choosing the genetics for your future child. So whether you're a single parent and you need to use a donor because you need to have the other pieces of the puzzle, if you're a gay couple and need a donor for that same reason, or if you're a heterosexual couple and have infertility problems, and that is a difficulty that you're experiencing. For all of those reasons, there's going to be some difficulty in trying to figure out how am I going to choose the right genetics for my future child, and people get emotional when they think about that. Even if you've never gone through infertility, you worry about your future children. You want to make sure that they're going to be healthy and that they're going to have all the qualities that maybe you weren't able to give them. So the question is, how do you think about this and not get caught up in it emotionally, right? And many places where you go to look for a donor and go to look for a sperm or egg donor give you information that will help you feel comfortable, right? Because we're taking something that's very unfamiliar to you and then you have to make it familiar. Right? So how do you do that? Well, people will typically try to find people like them, right? Or people like their sibling or their best friend or somebody that they know. Sometimes even some of these programs will show like celebrity lookalikes, or this person has, perfect SAT scores, or, has won these awards, and things that will make us feel like, wow, this is a great person. I can feel comfortable making this choice because it feels familiar to me, or it makes me feel good. And that's great. It's great to be able to feel good about your donor for a number of reasons. First of all, if you, over time, are you going to be talking about your donor? I think it's important that you should be. You want to say nice things about your donor, right? And you want to be able to say nice things that you feel about your donor genuinely, not that you're just putting it on. You also want to make sure that if this is a person that your child might meet one day, this is a person you can feel proud of and feel like, yes, I want this person to be able to treat my child well, to be receptive to them. So there's a lot of reasons to like your donor anyway. And maybe there's also some familial difficulties that you are encountering. Let's say, your parents feel like the family tree is really important and they really want everyone in the family to be Italian, or they really want everybody in the family to have a certain cultural or religious background. What do? You have this pressure. So there are a lot of difficulties that are weighing on you. And all of those things are valid and important, but they are not the whole story. Because what you're really doing is not choosing a person, even though it feels like you're choosing a person, you're really choosing their whole family. You're choosing the genetics from that family, right? And so if we look at people, even in popular culture, like, our ex-president of the United States, Bill Clinton, he's a Rhodes Scholar, president of the United States, and his brother's an alcoholic and had trouble kind of keeping his life together, right? Two princes of England look very different, right? In every country, you can find an example of this. And in our own homes, we can see that we are not just like our siblings or just like our parents. So what do? We might be choosing a donor who is not the right person for us. And I often talk about some of the donors that I screen. And I once screened a donor, an egg donor, who had blonde hair and fair skin, and she looked a lot like me. She also had attributes that seemed familiar to me, like she was creative when she was a kid, she liked dogs. There were all these things about her that seemed really familiar. And I thought, well, if, I needed a donor, she might be a good person for me to choose. Well, she has 4 brothers. They all have red hair, and they're all interested in math and science. So it's totally not the right person for me, right? So we don't really think about that. We just look at this person because we want so much to feel familiar. We want so much to feel like this stranger is going to be in our world, in our household, in the most intimate experiences of our life and our family. How can I make that comfortable? And that's understandable. And I think it's really important to appreciate the things that are important to you. But we also have to think about what are the things that we have some control over versus the things we don't have control over. And we don't necessarily have control over whether or not that person's going to, be tall or short, have lighter or darker skin, have red hair or blonde hair. Those things we just don't know. It's a roll of the dice. And
So even after we choose, we need to figure out a way to keep an open mind and to understand that the fact that the person that we chose is not the identical thing that will eventually become our child.
yes, I think that's very important because we want to love our children for who they are, right? Not who necessarily we want them to be. And so that's very important no matter what. But I think even before we choose, we need to think about what is really important, right? Is it really important that person is going to have our same shaped eyebrows or whatever, even though everybody in our family has the same bushy eyebrows? Is that the most important thing? And is it something we can control? So I think the answer to those questions is no. It's not the most important thing, and it's nothing that we have control over. So what are the things that we have some control over? And I think we have some control over the most important thing, which is health. And so I think that the first thing to think about is to make sure that the donors screen properly. The donors need to be screened medically and psychologically properly. Sometimes donors do not have proper screening. There was an article, I think yesterday in the Wall Street Journal about someone who committed suicide, and it turned out that his donor also had mental health issues. And so we don't know. There have been many court cases where people, find out down the line that their donor has bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or cystic fibrosis carrier. We really don't want that. And so we need to make sure that they have proper screening. And the American
So, most of the intended parents that we know, they go through an agency. But how can they be sure that the agency has properly screened their egg donor or their surrogate?
Well, I think that both, so with a surrogate and an egg donor, you're looking for different things, right? But in both of those cases, the agency really should follow the guidelines set forth by the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, which includes a psychological screening by a qualified mental health professional, and also a test called the PAI, Personality Assessment Inventory, or the MMPI. Those are objective tests, and those are very important because even though there's no bulletproof solution, we need to be able to screen for psychopathology. And also, there are indicators for deception in both of those tests. And so it really gives us an idea if that donor is lying to us, which is important not just for the psychological information, but also because they could be lying about their medical information. So those things are important. And I think ideally, the patients should have an objective person screen the donors. Because it is.
So, even if you're going through an agency and they told you that they have screened the surrogate or the egg donor, you are still allowed to ask for another person to come in a private way and do the screening,
Yes.
right?
Yep. So I would.
Okay, so I'm not sure that most of the people know that, and I think it's very, very important
Right.
to know your rights and to know that it's okay to ask for that.
Mhm. Absolutely. And your clinic can do it. Even if you have a mental health professional that you trust at your clinic, they can do that too, because some clinics will mandate that all of the donors and the surrogates that come to them are screened by that clinic as well. They want to make sure that they're not going through this process and just taking on a family and a surrogate or a donor who isn't properly screened, so they need to do the screening themselves. Some clinics do not mandate that their own people do it, so I would then get an outside professional who is experienced in this area to do it, because you really want to make sure that you are screening properly.
So we know that the mental health professionals, they have this huge role, but they can do different things. One thing is to screen the egg donors and the surrogates, but another one is to be there for the intended parents along the journey.
Yes.
How can intended parents know that this is the time to go and ask for help? I mean, it's a journey that is an emotional roller coaster, and you go through a lot. But when is the best time to stop and give yourself a minute and go and get an advice from a professional?
So I think it's really important to, and this is part of, again, the guidelines for the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, that before anyone embarks on a donor conception journey or a surrogacy journey, that they do have an educational consultation with a qualified mental health professional. It's important for them to make sure that they understand what they're getting into, of course. It's important for them to understand that they might need some support in this. And it's also important for them to understand maybe some things that they haven't thought about yet, such as, we just covered. There are many, many things that people don't think about in all of these circumstances, and in known donor situations as well, where people have not thought about certain circumstances, and they really need to think through those things first, because we don't want them to get into this either feeling like they're unprepared or having regrets. And I have had many people come to me, years later saying, I regret doing this way. I wish I could have done this differently. And if I'd only known, I would have done something differently. And it's a shame. It really doesn't have to be that way.
So, had a very interesting conversation in the past about your perception of
Mm-hmm.
about the open egg donation. I know that more and more intended parents and more egg donors are
Yeah.
willing to do an open donation, which allows the couples to contact the egg donor eventually. I wanted to hear more about it from you.
So I think it's very important that we will. I think as a society we will get to open donation. I think it's very important for a number of reasons that we have open donation. I think it's important for the donors. I think a lot of these young people, men and women, when they donate at 22 or 25 years old, don't kind of realize that in 20 years from now, when they have their families, there may be many people coming back to ask them questions. I don't think people realize that health changes over time. And so a woman who's 24 years old may be perfectly healthy and may have no genetic predisposition for any difficulty, but then at 35 might get breast cancer, right? I think that many people, most people, are curious about their identity and want to understand where they came from. Whether or not they have a relationship with the donor or not is a different story. Sometimes they just want to see the face of the person who helped create them. Sometimes they just want to meet donor-related siblings. Sometimes they actually want to have a relationship with the donor. And I think that it's very important to help people feel whole and to help people feel that they can have all of those pieces of their identity complete. And so I think, and that's just a small piece of it, but I think it's moving in that direction now. On the West Coast in the United States, there are many more open donor programs than on the East Coast. I'm not sure why that is, but it's the case. And I think it's really a matter of time before all of them are open, and it will make everything, I think, a lot easier.
Hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, we're almost done with the interview. Is there anything that you would like to add before we finish?
Yes, I think that, as we're talking, Ronnie, about a lot of these things, I think, what I'm talking about most of all is that it's important for people to prepare for their journey. People prepare for their careers. People prepare for their retirement. They think about how much money do they want to put away for their retirement. People think about what graduate schools to go to and all of that. I think preparing for your family is so important. It's important to understand that eggs get old. It's important to understand that there are many choices in the world. Egg and sperm donation are wonderful choices. They may not be everyone's first choice, but they're wonderful choices. And surrogacy is becoming much more available. I understand that things are changing in Israel too, which is fantastic.
We had a very historic day yesterday, yeah. We were there in the press conference. It was very exciting, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
There are many, many problems and other issues, but it's a step in a good direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So
Definitely.
I think it's important. And as I said at the beginning, I really want people to avoid regret. And if you can really do your homework and prepare yourself for your journey, I think you'll have a much better journey and avoid regret later. So I think, what I'm really talking about is planning and thinking through with people who understand things that maybe you haven't thought about, what your journey is going to look like and how to prepare for it in the best way you can.
Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that I learned a lot, and I have like 10 million other questions that I will take on the next time that you agree to meet with me.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Ronnie. It's a pleasure to see you.
So thank you all for joining us to another chapter of Expecting Answers. I'm Ronit Ghani, and I had a wonderful time speaking with Lisa Schuman, and I hope to see you all back in the next chapter. See you guys. Goodbye.